Pittsburgh is a city in southwestern Pennsylvania and is mostly known for being the site of the Monongahela River and the Allegheny River's confluence into the Ohio River. It's the easternmost of the historically industrial Midwest cities. It's probably not the first city you think of when you think of commuter rail, because it's mostly known for its light rail and bus network, operated by the Pittsburgh Regional Transit, better known as the former name of the Port Authority. But did I ever tell you that there used to be another train that they had but didn't quite go the way they hoped? Ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, as me and my good friend SteelAndCities tell you the story of the PATrain, Pittsburgh's ill-fated commuter train. So, it's the late 1960s. Public transit in Pittsburgh typically was made mostly up of PCC streetcars and buses controlled by the Pittsburgh Port Authority, or PAT for short, or as I like to call it, PAT. Pittsburgh was also served by a few Baltimore and Ohio Railroad commuter trains with aging equipment, along with the occasional Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad commuter train.
By the 1970s, Pittsburgh's commuter rail, like the rest of the country, was looking bleak. Aging equipment, declining ridership, and mounting expenses meant that the freight railroads operating the commuter trains could ill afford to continue doing so. The Pennsylvania Railroad had already ended service on its 6 commuter routes in 1964, citing flagging ridership. It was in this context that in early 1970, the Port Authority entered discussions with the B&O in Pittsburgh and Lake Erie to improve their dwindling commuter services, mostly focusing on increasing the frequency of the services. At that time, the B&O operated 6 weekday round trips between Pittsburgh and Versailles, while the PNLE operated a single weekday round trip between Pittsburgh and Beaver Falls, which they would end up operating under subsidies by the state of Pennsylvania until 1985.
Neither the B&O or the PLE showed much interest in expanded service because they already had operating losses and declining patronage. Pat then proposed that they take ownership of the B&O service, with the B&O operating it under contract. The B&O trains made the run from McKeesport to Pittsburgh in 25 minutes, twice as fast comparable to a bus service. Among the strongest supporters in the local government were then Mayor Peter F. Flaherty and County Commissioner William Hunt. Another champion was Harold Geisenheimer, Pat's Director of Transit Operations. In 1974, Pat estimated capital costs for a 3-year trial at $1.7 million, plus $1.9 million in operating costs. The capital cost would be split between the federal government and the state of Pennsylvania and the county, and would include the purchase of 2 locomotives and 9 coaches. Pat would increase the existing 2-car trains to 4-car trains, while also increasing frequency of service. The per-passenger subsidy was estimated at 95 cents, compared to 6 to 13 cents for the typical bus passenger. Daily ridership then stood at 300. Pat's best-case projection was at 3,000. A proposal by Hunt to extend the service further to Elizabeth was unsuccessful. The route was owned by the PNLE, which requested $500,000 to rehabilitate the line. Pennsylvania wouldn't provide this much money, as the line would still mostly carry PNLE freight traffic and not commuters.
By mid-1977, daily ridership had grown to 1,400, which seemed to indicate that the improvements the Port Authority were making were working. On the other hand, the per-passenger subsidy stood at $2.77, nearly 3 times the 1974 projection, while the bus subsidy was only 8 cents per passenger. However, one of the advantages the PATrain was able to leverage early on was its speed relative to the bus services in the area. According to a 1977 article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the train was able to make the trip between Versailles and Pittsburgh in 33 to 35 minutes, while it usually took just over an hour on a bus.
In 1978, Pat renewed its agreement with the B&O and was finally able to secure the capital funding for the new equipment plus a new intermodal transportation center in McKeesport. The McKeesport Transportation Center opened on December 21, 1981. In addition to buses and the PATrain, the center saw service from Amtrak's Chicago to DC Capital Limited. Additional capital improvements included the construction of a new park and ride lots in Braddock and Versailles, and the addition to a new stop at Port View.
With the Port Authority finally able to realize the improvements to Pittsburgh's commuter rail through PATrain, they now invested in improving the actual trains. 2 EMD F7 locomotives were purchased and refurbished by General Electric. 9 ex-Chesapeake and Ohio Pullman coaches were acquired, with one being modified into a cab car with locomotive controls to allow push-pull operation, negating the need to turn around the train when it reached each end of the line. 4 Bud Rail diesel cars were also acquired to serve as a stopgap when the cab car was unavailable and operated in 1 to 4 car trains. The route length was 18.2 miles with a ride time of about 35 minutes, with trains averaging a speed of about 30 miles an hour. It made 4 station stops between the terminal at Grant Street and Versailles, which were Hazelwood, Braddock, McKeesport, and Port Vue. By mid-1979, service had increased to 8 round trips Monday through Friday and 5 round trips on Saturday. 3 of these round trips terminated at McKeesport, with the remaining 5 continuing to Versailles. To give the service a little character, the Port Authority implemented a practice uncommon to most commuter railroads in the U.S. and named their trains in the timetable, giving them names such as the Early Bird, the Golden Triangle, the Mon Valley, the McKeesporter, and the Youghiogheny. Daily ridership peaked in 1981 at 1,800 during the reconstruction of the Parkway East Freeway, which also spawned the short-lived PennDOT-operated Parkway Limited. By the early 1980s, however, the industrial activity that sustained the Monongahela Valley where the service ran through was collapsing, taking much of the PAtrain's ridership with it. In 1983, daily ridership had dropped below 1,300 over 8 daily round trips. Operating expenses for 1982 and 1983 were $1.8 million, of which only $500,000 was recovered. When explaining these losses, the Port Authority's operation director noted the increase in train fares, rising use of carpooling to commute by those without cars, and the hauling out of industry in the Monongahela Valley.
Pat unfortunately discontinued service of the PAtrain after April 28, 1989, when it held its final train, citing declining ridership and increasing operating losses due to inflation. Pat instituted express bus service to cover the route. The PAtrain was quite ambitious, and it did pretty well before things started getting incredibly expensive. It only lasted for 14 years, but that's still pretty good for aging equipment. Tell us in the comments, what do you think of the story of the PAtrain? Thanks to SteelAndCities for being a huge help to this video. Remember to like and subscribe or comment for more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching.